All right, so today I wanted to start by talking about this story that I seen from Zuby Music, and it's out of The Guardian, and it's titled, You Know What? Driven Recession Likely to Push 2 Million UK Families into Poverty. And Zuby here says, it's important to be clear that this is the result of mandatory lockdowns and other unnecessary restrictions, not the virus itself. I opposed lockdowns from early and took so much flack for it. I saw this coming. I wasn't actually trying to kill your grandma. Again, um, this is just more of what we already know. We've known this for months now that the lockdowns, they don't work. They don't save lives. Now again, the lockdown zealots would point out, oh, it would save some lives, but yeah, what they don't tell you is that you get stuff like this, and that yes, technically by locking down, you will save a handful of people that would have otherwise died of the virus, but you're going to kill far more and cause far more suffering because of indirect effects of the lockdown. Now, this is a very interesting topic because this basically just speaks to the stupidity of the average person. Now, what do I mean by that? One of the most important things when it comes to economics and when it comes to this kind of stuff is that whenever the government is proposing whatever policy it is they're proposing, the most important thing that you need to consider isn't the expected results of the intended consequence. One of the most important things, if not the important thing, is what are the potential unintended consequences. And why is that so important? Because the average person isn't smart enough to think of the unintended consequences. This is why you have so many of these complete and utter idiots that think that genuinely believe that by locking down you're causing no pain and suffering whatsoever. There's only upside to locking down. There's no downside to locking down. But again, it's just because they're that ignorant. Like they're that ignorant, number one, and they believe the government can just print endless amounts of money and just give out endless amounts of money. They're dumb enough to believe that'll work. They're dumb enough to believe that businesses that get shut down are just magically going to come back. They're dumb enough to believe that this money is actually going to go to help the everyday person when in reality it ends up back in the hands of the rich because of policies they support. Again, they're so worried about the rich getting richer, but yet every single policy position they have pretty much benefits the rich, right? Pretty much every policy position they have, and not because it directly does, but because again they think that oh, if you have this big welfare state that it helps the poor, right? But in reality, what do poor people do with their money? The poor people invest their money. The poor people spend their money in ways that is actually going to benefit them in the long run? No. Most people, when they get a little bit of government stimulus, they go and they spend it on stupid stuff like, Amazon, a new TV, a new iPhone, that kind of stuff. So again, it's no surprise that Amazon and Apple and all these big companies are making, record profits, right? Or at the very least, their stock price is going through the roof. But again, the main point here being is that how many stories like this do we need to see? And this is the thing that you need to ask the lockdown zealots when you're talking to these people is how high do these numbers have to get before you would change your mind? Like if 2 million UK families being pushed into poverty isn't enough to sway your mind, like what is? Like seriously, what is? Another thing that's really bothered me lately as well is that I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone who knows anyone who has died from this. Not one person. But I have heard of multiple, more than I can count, to be honest, of people that either know people directly or know people who, work with people or have, work associates that have had people that have killed themselves. I've heard of more cases than I can count. So again, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? This is the thing that because this is why the whole Great Reset thing and all this kind of stuff makes so much sense because there's no logic behind these lockdowns whatsoever. There's no logic whatsoever. We are not saving lives. We're not saving lives. That is the biggest lie that has been told over the last year or so. We're not saving lives by doing this. It's so obvious to anyone even remotely paying attention. It's not even funny. So again, the fact that there's no logic behind what we're doing, it must mean that there is something else going on. And again, I think that's where the whole Great Reset thing comes in. Like again, it's just the same thing goes for climate change. Same thing goes for all the. I mean, another thing I'll get into is that the goal. of these things, it isn't climate change. It isn't saving lives when it comes to this stuff. The goal is to grow the government, to push for socialism, and um, basically that's what the push is, right? That's what the push is. So again, I just wanted to point this out because it bothers me so much when people talk about how, oh, we got to shut down because we got to save lives. No, we're not saving lives. The hospitals have never been overwhelmed up until this point. And again, people say, oh, there was, this one hospital that was at 100% capacity. But again, what they don't tell you is that hospitals routinely run at 100% capacity. And if they're not close to that, again, hospitals, especially in the States, but Canada as well, because believe it or not, doctors don't just work out of the goodness of their heart. And same goes for nurses. You either have to pay them directly or indirectly. So again, people think, oh, it's free. No, you're just admitting how stupid you are. The hospitals, the people that work there, they still needs to be paid for one way or the other, whether it's private or public. It's still in the end, it's still the general public paying for it, right? So again, hospitals need to be close to 100% capacity. They're not designed to run at 50% capacity, right? This is why a lot of some hospitals are shutting down, is because especially in the States, you've seen there was hospitals that were, I think, a handful that shut down and a lot that were at risk of shutting down because things were less busy than before, right? They were less busy because they canceled all the surgeries and expecting this massive wave of virus patients, and they didn't come, right? They didn't come. So, yeah, this is a very important thing that it needs to be brought up more, I believe. The next thing from Stefan Molyneux here, he says, for those who believe in an amoral universe, there is no such thing as cheating. Is it cheating for a fisherman to bury a hook in a worm? No. That's just how he gets his resources. It's the same for those addicted to power. Now, again, this is something that I talk about quite a bit, and by what he means by this is um, for like, I mean, take an example. For the left to, lie, manipulate, cheat, steal, I mean, it's very obvious there was at least some cheating going on in the US election. The debate is, was it enough to sway the election? The fact that, they constantly call people racists and sexist and all this stuff when 99% of the time it's BS. Now, people that have their heads on straight think to themselves, well, what makes them do this? Like, how can they be so just brazen and crazy? Like, how do they have a conscience after doing that? And the way they do it is that, again, it's the same as, a fisherman burying a hook in a worm. It's the same as a lion sneaking up on its predator. They don't view it as cheating because it's, to them, it's literally the difference between living and dying. So again, when you view stealing money from other people and using it for yourself to fund your, so because you don't want to work, right? You want to work and sit at home all day and get paid to do it. A lot of these people literally view that as a matter of life and death. So of course they're willing to lie and cheat and steal. Like, this is something that, again, it really surprises me how many people can't put two and two together on this one. Like, it really does. And again, speaking of craziness, this is from Luke Radowski here, and he points out, never forget that in 2010, Kamala Harris sponsored a law to make it a misdemeanor for parents whose children miss school with a $2,500 fine or a year in jail. She later said the law had unintended consequences after parents actually did jail time because the law targeted poor and sick minorities. If you think she is the face of progressivism and reform, you're probably a useful idiot for the Democratic Party. No, again, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Exactly what I'm talking about. These people are willing to compromise every shred of moral and ethical integrity they have as long as it means they get power, right? They will do whatever needs to be done. Again, Joe Biden pushed the 94 crime bill that is one of the main reasons why there's this disproportionality between blacks and whites in jail, but yet Joe Biden got record votes by quite a bit, by millions, right? So do they care about this kind of stuff? No, they'll care about it when it's a right winger doing it. Absolutely. Again, do they care about more racism when it's a left winger doing it? No, they could care less. I mean, look at Canada proved that as well with Justin Trudeau, right? They don't care. If Andrew Scheer would have wore blackface that many times, it would have destroyed his career. But Justin Trudeau does it and loses a handful of seats, but still easily stays in power, right? Right? He still easily stays in power. Not to mention they basically have a majority government too. Let's not kid ourselves. They can easily get the NDP's support. or even the blocks to a degree as well. But again, this is a very important thing that, again, it needs to be talked about more too, because if we keep sliding down this hill, it's going to keep getting worse and worse too. Like, people, when it comes to politics, they seem to think that if they just ignore the problem, it's just going to go away. But again, if you've been following politics, even remotely closely over the last, 10 to 20 years, it's very easy to recognize that things have become progressively more polarized, and I think it's compounding as well, and that it's not at the same rate that it was 5 or 10 years ago. I mean, I think Trump is what really flipped the switch, but I mean Trudeau in Canada as well. But again, it needs to be talked about more. And this is from Cory Morgan. So again, the Trudeau government is proposing, making Netflix and Amazon pay taxes, because, oh, they're big corporations, they make tons of money, right? But the reality is that this is just going to backfire. This is how it always works. That what's going to happen is very simple. Let's say that, the liberals put a 5% tax on Netflix or Amazon or whatever you want to call it. Well, guess what? They just turn around and raise their prices for us, right? So at the end of the day, it's the consumer that loses out. So increasing taxes almost never does away. And this is another thing that the left continuously gets wrong, is that they think that, oh, we could literally eliminate poverty if we just raise taxes on the big corporations and the rich. Like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. If you raise taxes on the corporations, guess what? They just increase their prices, or they go out of business, right? That's very simple, because even though a lot of these companies make a ton of money, they're a lot of times they're not running large, margins, right? Like, Amazon may only make, like, if they only made like $1 a package, right? There's probably tens of thousands of Amazon packages that are delivered a day just in Alberta. There's probably millions every day, right? So again, like, the margins aren't that big. The margins aren't that big. This is another thing they don't tell you. But anyway, like I say, he points out a very good point here too, and then it's just going to end up with us paying more. It's the same thing as the carbon tax. Perfect example. It's the carbon tax. All these companies did is they just turned around and raised their prices, right? They just turned around and raised their prices, right? Look at the cost of groceries, right? That's another prime example that, over the last 5 years, the cost of groceries has gone through the roof, right? And why is that? It's partially because of the carbon tax and all the stupid regulations we put in. Whenever you put these regulations in, the businesses don't just take the hit, right? They don't just, maybe the odd one can afford it, but most of these businesses can't just afford to just take a hit, right? That's not how it works. That's not how it works. So anyway, if you like the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out the links below. Hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to donate, you can do that as well. Again, I appreciate whatever support I can get, but again, at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more.